Porn in the woods is a thing. It is. And it occurs more often than you could even imagine. Think about how much porn you believe is found in the woods every day, and then times that number by 100, and you might be close to what the national average actually is. For a young man, finding porn in the woods is an age-old tradition that has been going on for centuries, like cycles of the moon or global warming. I can say with great confidence that every man in this room has a story about finding porn in the woods. But this is my story. I was in 2nd grade, and already I was no stranger to danger when it came to boobs. Yeah, I'd seen a titty or two on a nudie calendar that hung in my uncle's body shop. Plus, we had Cinemax, so, I could sneak a peek when I wasn't being directly supervised. As far as what was going on below the equator in Ladyland, well, I was in the dark about that. And I'm not talking about Bush either, okay? This was the 80s, mind you, so every nudie pic I had ever seen was accompanied by the prerequisite gargantuan Bush that said time period dictated. Yeah, I'd seen Bush. I'm talking about the beast within. Whatever it was that lurked just below those sexy, curly, bountiful tufts had managed to elude me. Until today, that is. My best friend Jonathan and I were playing in his backyard, as was our daily custom. And due to the frequency in which we engaged with each other, it stands to reason that a lot of firsts happened to me at this house. Plus, our only form of supervision came in the form of this hapless preteen sister who gave exactly no fucks what we were doing and where we were. I made my first prank phone call at Jonathan's house, and I listened to Weird Al Yankovic for the very first time. We watched Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time there, and wholeheartedly regretted it over the next 2 nightmare-filled sleepless weeks. We got a little kitten together, and we kept it at his house. It was the first pet I had ever had. It died 3 days later when we got it from feline leukemia. I was unable to be present for the burial. That last one actually kind of sucked. But there was one particular first that certainly did not suck. We were playing around in the backyard and decided on a whim to jump the fence, cross the small wooded area that backed up to the local grocery store. Now, this wasn't out of the ordinary for us, since we often went there to play video games or waste our money on stupid shit. However, what we happened upon on this particular outing was quite out of the ordinary for us. We were both just looking down at it for a while. I don't know how long. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. The passage of time is hard to judge at that age. I'm not sure if we were each waiting for the other one to pick it up first, or we were just lulled in this hypnotic trance by what we were seeing. The object responsible for hijacking our attention was a cherry magazine, partially covered by leaves and dirt. This was huge. I mean, this was truly a huge score for two young men such as ourselves. Our mounting courage peaked, and we both reached for the sparkling gem at the same time. I must have been quicker, because suddenly I was holding the magazine and brushing the dirt from the crinkled cover. Jonathan leaned in closely as I slowly opened it and adjusted to give him an equally good view. The first picture was of a woman in a lacy red negligee, with the top pulled down to her stomach so as to adequately display her ample breasts. Good old, reliable, familiar, safe boobs. Just because I had seen boobs before didn't make it any less awesome to see them again. And I found myself transfixed by their very magnificence until Jonathan started elbowing me in the ribs. "Dude, turn the page, dude," he almost said pleadingly. I snapped out of it, slapped the page over, and as my mind began to try to process what I was seeing, I was a bit confused. It was the same woman, and now she was laying on a heart-shaped bed with a lacy bedspread that matched her negligee. Her top was still pulled down, but the red panties she wore on the page prior were gone. Her legs were spread wide open, and her curly, soft mound of mystery had been shaved into what I later came to know as a landing strip. Without the shroud of mystery I had become accustomed to, I found myself face to face with the elusive human vagina in all of its biological glory. when I first saw the moist pink and red flaps of skin being elegantly held apart by the woman's fingers, I thought she had been injured. As far as I knew, you weren't supposed to be able to see this far inside of a person. Had she been shot? Maybe this cherry magazine was less about naked ladies and more about hunting the most dangerous game of all, men. I guess Jonathan was as shocked as I was because neither of us said a word. Despite the trepidation over what I was currently seeing, I slowly turned the page. The next picture did nothing to assuage my fear that this poor woman had been somehow injured in her private area. Screaming up from the page was an insanely extreme close-up of what looked like a walrus that had been blasted point blank with a shotgun. The only indication of what I was looking at was human was the woman's two fingers, which were still in the shot, as she pulled herself even wider. This was it. This was the big show, and I was a far cry from my safe and comfortable bastion over in Titty Town. This was my introduction to Vaginaville. And as the initial shock wore off, I began studying the dripping wet pink flaps, folds upon folds of secret flesh that had been kept hidden from me by Bush until now. Soon my head started to swim. I felt like I might pass out. The tiniest bit of blood had just begun to rush to my prepubescent penis when we heard rustling behind us. Jonathan took off, running back in the direction of his house. I took in one last look into the mouth of madness before dropping the magazine and running after him. We didn't stop until we'd climbed his fence, were back in his bedroom, where we listened to Weird Al and didn't discuss what we had seen. We ended up going back to look at the magazine a few more times over the next couple weeks. But then one day, it was gone, thus concluding our anatomy lesson for the time being. Now, I'm sure some older kids found it, took it home to add it to their collection of porno that I believed all older kids had. But still, part of me likes to think that the magazine knew that it had fulfilled its purpose with us and flew off to another part of the woods where it could be found by other young boys to help guide them through the path of manhood. Sure, I went on to find more porn in the woods that I could tell you about. A lot of it, in fact. But nothing beats your first time.